I was first posted to 14th Squadron. It was my first fighter squadron when I was a pilot officer. After doing my conversion on the Tempest aircraft in Mariupol, I was very fortunately posted to number 14 Squadron because it was commanded by one of the most outstanding squadron commanders, the late Air Commodore Masroor Hussain. It was a great fortune for all of us to have served under him, the first commander who then leads you and guides you in towards your life forward into the Air Force. In that squadron, there were some momentous occasions as we were being trained. Squadron commander, as I said, was Masroor Hussain. A flight commander was a very, very outstanding pilot by the name of Dan Durrani. Flight Lieutenant Dan Durrani. But he was a bit dangerous. He used to take us for close formation over this Bada and this area. And sometimes our wing was so close to the hilltops that we thought that we would crash any minute. And once or twice, one of the pilots broke away, and then he never flew the Fury. He was a very hard taskmaster. So we had very, very hard training. We used to be given air combat at, let's say, 500 feet off the ground in Furies, and pulling 4Gs, 5Gs, and so on. And also we had a stint in Miran Shah. Well, young, by then I think we've been promoted to flying officers, and at Miran Shah we did about 1 month of our duty, during which I also had the opportunity to carry out some operational missions at that very young age. But that's how we were trained hard by our commanders, and the faith they put in, even in the youngest pilots. Sarfraz Rafiqi, myself, what's the name, and some of the other, Munir Ahmed. And these were the pilots, Lani Cullen, the Anglo-Indian, excellent. And we used to go and do rocket firing and bombing against the fakir of APs, what you call these hordes, who used to come and try and kill our Tochi scouts. So we had that experience right at the beginning. So we had been fighting these Lashkars that came from Afghanistan right from those days of I'm talking about 1953. Luckily, soon after, it was a very great news one morning that the squadron commander called me and Zahir, flying officer Zahir, was also one of my close friends and my roommate. And we were told that we are posted to number 11 Fighter Interceptor Squadron, which was Attacker Squadron. So that was the end of our 14th Squadron stint. It was only about 8 months, but it was a very profound time and a very hard training and motivation that we assimilated during that period. After that, my contact with 14th Squadron happened in 1960, end of 68, and I served there for 2 years. And that was in East Pakistan. When I arrived there, it was being commanded by Wing Commander Tawab, who later on became the chief of Bangladesh Air Force, and I took over from him. When I went there, one of the most I would say exciting thing for me was that it was an independent command. That I, as a squadron commander, and I'm the kind of a person who always needed to be left alone. And my talent and my ability only comes, it flourishes when I'm left alone to do something. And I'm also take full responsibility for what I do or what I plan. And so this was a great opportunity for me, because my commander, the base commander, was Air Commodore Zulfikar Ali Khan, who later on became the chief of the Air Force. And he had known me from my cadetship days. And he was totally non-interfering, and he had left everything to me to command the squadron. He had total confidence in my ability. But I had some very fine pilots posted in that in my squadron. So the first thing that I did was to restructure the training into operational training. all normal training of, high-level interception, low-level interception, etc. Through the radar, we substituted that. So what I did was I created 2 flights from the squadron. I think I had about 18 pilots, 19 pilots. And so I made 2 flights. And Ulka, one was an Ulka flight. Ulka is the name of a river in East Pakistan. Dhaka ke paas hai. So we wanted to give one flight the content, local content, and the other was called Sherdil. The name Sherdil, जो Air Force में अब बहुत इस्तेमाल होता है, वो वहाँ से शुरू किया था हमने. अच्छा, 2 फ्लाइट्स हमने बना ली. उसके साथ जो कंट्रोलर थे वहाँ पे एयर डिफेंस के, वो बड़े एक्सपीरियंस लोग थे. विंग कमांडर शहजादा वाज वन ऑफ द सीनियर मोस्ट एयर डिफेंस कंट्रोलर. वो थे तकरीबन 8 ऑफिसर थे. तो उनको मैंने 4 और 4 एक फ़्लाइट के साथ अटैच कर दिए. तो उसके साथ जो हमारी टेक्निकल टीम थी, एयरमैन, वो भी मैंने 2 हिस्सों में तकसीम कर दी, ताकि 2 बिल्कुल फ़्लाइट्स अलग-अलग उनको अपनी अलग-अलग कमांड अपना एक कैरेक्टर उनका बना दिया, ताकि कंपटीशन होना चाहिए. क्योंकि पीस टाइम में अगर सारे एक फ्लाइंग कर रहे हैं तो मेरे दिमाग में ये था कि नहीं, कंपटीशन होना चाहिए जिसमें स्पिरिट हो कंपटीशन की, ताकि एवरीबडी वुड लाइक टू excel the other one. So we created these 2 flights, and if I recall, we had created a trophy with the dagger, which was a 14 Squadron thing, and we had it mounted. And every month, at the end of the month, one flight was awarded the trophy for having performed best. How did we judge that? We judged that, and by this time, Zulfikar Sahab had left, and Air Commodore Mitti Masood, one of the finest, famous commanders of the Pakistan Air Force, he came and AOC in chief of the Dhaka base, all the bases, whatever, we had Kurmitola, but it was a non-functional, but nonetheless, Dhaka was, Tejgaon was the main base. He was a great planner, and he used to attend all the briefings, which I used to carry out, and all the debriefings. And we also had the ECEC commander, Colonel Gilani, very fine officer. So they used to all attend the briefings. So we had created, in my office were charts of both flights separately, each pilot's name, and their performance in air combat, in ground attack, in formation flying, all the various things were judged almost in every sortie. So this was written, and their aggregate was then at the bottom. And a young man called Flying Officer Khalil, I still remember, who later on was shot down over Dhaka, near Dhaka, along with PQ Mahdi, who became the Chief of the Air Force later on. And he used to maintain them, and I used to always credit and tell people what a fantastic job this young flying officer was doing, because he was motivated, because he felt that his contribution towards the operational preparedness was very important, very crucial, that he made very accurate entries into the thing. And at the end of the month, we used to say which flight has gained more marks and more numbers. And then, so the competition was pretty hard. And what was the competition about? The squadron was assigned totally, I would say essentially, air defense role, because I figured out that in the next war there would be no opportunity for 14th Squadron to be able to go and strike the Indian bases, because the Indians were far too prepared. They had 11 squadrons against our 1 squadron. So, and also they had very highly defended airfields, and they had a whole network of radar that was spawned all over the eastern border of India. So therefore, it was out of the question to carry out any counter-air operations, typically as we did in '65 war. So I wanted to prepare the squadron in air defense role. But then we had very limited resources. What did we have? We had one very derelict, high-looking radar, but which was mostly unserviceable as far as I remember. We had one low-looking radar, AR-1 radar, which is actually an air traffic control radar. And its pickup range is about, maybe maximum is about 25 miles. So that means that this radar could pick up omnidirectionally a raid coming in at 25 miles. 25 miles meant about 3 minutes from the target, which means Dhaka airfield. So 3 minutes warning was only given by this. So what do? How do we try to find that we should be able to intercept this incoming raid at least 5 to 8 miles before it starts to pull up? So for that we created, I had learned that in the flight leader school where I was a flight commander, and we used to practice this. It's called rat and terrier. Because we didn't have radars and all the sophistication that you have today, and what you will be talking about, what the capability of 14 Squadron, mashallah, is today. Ours was a very rudimentary radar, rudimentary thing, map and a watch and a Chinagraph pencil in our hand. And we had drawn circles. It's a complicated affair that we used to draw circles and then have angles going on and all that stuff. And the main informer was the forward air controller. You know, these what are they called? We used to have these controllers sitting on the border, and then at 30 miles, and then at 60 miles. And they would report. This is a team of airmen, I think one flight sergeant and a couple of airmen in a jeep, and they have a Morse code thing. So the moment an enemy raid comes, and these are spread like I think about 10 miles apart. 10 miles apart, so that they can see, you can see 5 miles this side, 5 miles this side, so they overlap. So no aircraft, no raid could actually escape their thing. This is what we'd hoped, but unfortunately it didn't work that way. So these forward air controller, forward controllers, they would report a raid coming in. And then the pilot would be positioned by the radar at about 30 miles, 40 miles from the airfield, from the target. There's only one target, that was Tejgaon airfield where we had the fighter squadron. And the radar could see the aircraft at the interceptor. The interceptor pair would be positioned on the first information report. When the forward controller reported certain GeoRef, like latitude and longitude, the controller in the radar would tell the fighter to go that way. So he would fly full speed and go at about 30 to 40 miles, and he could still be seen by the radar because he was at height 5,000 feet or so. So the radar could see him, although he couldn't tell the height of it because it didn't have the capability for height. But he could see him, and he would keep him in a circle. And the pilot himself, when he got the second information from the second line, which is on the ground, these controllers are sitting on the ground, 10 miles apart. So when they give you information, then the controller can draw a line. The first report was from here, the second was from here. So this is how he's going. And the pilot would work out in his own map that if this chap is coming in this, so he would work out an intercept angle, and he would start aiming towards that angle. And he would start heading towards that side. And by the time the third line of these controllers would give a position, that would be I think 21 miles, approximately 21 miles or 18 miles, I can't recall now. And that was the last one. But by then the low-looking radar is expected to have picked up the enemy raid, and they can see it on the radar. So now the fighter is put behind that, and the fighter, we used to sometimes see the raid even before the radar could tell us. Radar saw it later, and the pilot, by his own calculation, he used to make an intercept angle, and he would spot the raid coming, and he would go. Now, the question was, how close to the target was this raid spotted? If he was, let's say, about 10 miles or 12 miles, which was generally the case, 10 to 12 miles, and the fighter was full throttle, and if he thought that he could intercept this raid before he pulled up, which is like he's only about 1.5 minutes from the target. If he could shoot him down, so the limitation that we had determined was that if the fighter is about 3,000 feet and the raid is still about 10 miles, then he would give a call, gate. Gate meant for another concept was this, what they call the killer control. That also was started at that time. That one pilot was sitting on top of a tower and he was visually watching where the raid was coming from. And he also had a contact with the guns. And he had an army officer sitting with him on top of the tank. And he would tell the army officer, when he heard the pilot say gate, he would say all guns tied, nobody will fire, because the pilot would have shot the raid down before he can pull up and drop his weapons. And but if it was too close and the overtaking speed, the hunter is much faster, so if he was coming at, let's say, 540 miles an hour and the F-86 could not catch up, then he would call anarkali. I still remember that. It's been 1970 और आज देखें क्या है, मुझे याद आ रहा है कि anarkali call sign होता है, वो कहता था anarkali. The fighter would then pull up to about 14,000 feet, and anarkali meant the guns are free to fire. So the guns would open up, and the fighter would pull up and keep the raid in sight, and after the raid, if they escaped, and as they were escaping, then he would go after them after the raid was over. So this was the kind of exercise that was done every day, and this is how 14th Squadron was prepared for its role and how it performed. The gunners had a fantastic role, and the commander there, this Colonel Gilani, I remember that we had a lot of conversations. We used to also meet together in the mess, so we had a lot of bonhomie with each other. We had a lot of camaraderie. And he told me one day, he said, sir, the range of the gunner is very limited, because he can only see about 3 miles or so across. And that's too late, because the speed at which the raid is coming, by the time the raid comes and he gets ready and he starts aiming, he's not that well trained. He has very, what you call, rudimentary Chinese quad or something. So he has to take aim manually and lead manually and so on and so forth. So then one day we figured out, and I said, what about raising the platform of each gun? So he said, well, that would be an idea, but it will take a lot of effort, and where is the resource and all that. So I said, well, you talk to your GOC and I'll talk to my AOC. Anyway, it worked out, and all the guns were raised, I think 4 feet above the ground or 5 feet, and then their what you call view was enhanced exponentially, with the result that these gunners shot almost 18 Indian aircraft during those 3.5 days. The war lasted about 3 years. We had predicted in our presentation to the corps commander, he was also the governor at that time, General Yaqub, that we think that we'll last about 1.5 days, because the Indian have 11 squadrons, and when they will start bombing the runway, and the runway is bombed out, we will have no place to go, and that's what happened. But no. But the squadron fought with incredible courage and with do-or-die mission. Young pilots, Rashidi, Shimshad, but the guy who really ran the war in 71 was Squadron Leader Dilawar Hussain, who had also been with me in 19th Squadron during 65 war. A very brave, outstanding pilot. He took over while his squadron commander was doing staff operations duty. I don't know why he did that, but Dilawar Hussain, and he deserved a Sitara Jurat more than anybody else for that war also. He had won already. And these people fought against 11 squadrons. Indians carried out 2001 missions, and I want to show you the book which Indians have sent me. It's been sent to me by one of my contacts, Pushpinder Singh Chopra, who comes to Pakistan and is always the guest of Pakistan Air Force. He brought that book written by these two authors, Samir Chopra and Jagan Mohan. And in that they've said that 2001 missions are flown, and against Dhaka airfield, more than 300 sorties are flown in 2.5 days, 3 days or 4 days maybe. Can you imagine the intensity? कि कितना एक मिनट के बाद आ रहा था, दिन और रात को भी वो कर रहे थे बॉम्बिंग. और ये, and these people were taking off from half the runway, sometimes with they were repairing the runway, the airmen and everybody. And mind you, half of the airmen had been laid off because they were Bengalis. They had lost loyalty to Pakistan. Pilots, Bengali pilots, were all grounded. They had lost loyalty to Pakistan. So they were fighting under the most excruciating, and they were recorded by the BBC camera, like you're recording this interview. The BBC was recording from the roof of the Intercontinental Hotel, and it is famously said that they borrowed Churchill's famous saying about World War II, the Battle of Britain. He had said this particular sentence, but they paraphrased it and said that this squadron and its performance over Dhaka, he said, never have so many millions, means all the Pakistanis, owed so much to such a few brave men, meaning the pilots of 14th Squadron. And this is how 14th Squadron fought. Unfortunately, the runways were bombed out. And the last mission, very important, how the men, the non-gazetted, not the officers but the technicians, one was strapping Dilawar Hussain in his cockpit. Half the runway was gone, but he said he will take off from the other half runway. And he was starting up when the raid came. And the raid pulled up when Dilawar was in the cockpit. So the airman who was strapping him in, he threw himself on top of the canopy and covered Dilawar Hussain. The idea was that if the bullets come, he would take the bullets. So that is the motivation, and that's the leadership that determines failure or defeat in war. Unfortunately, Pakistan as a nation did not get a leader after Quaid-e-Azam. That is why we never made any progress. If we had, but Pakistan Air Force was very fortunate to have Air Marshal Afzal Khan, one of the greatest men this country has produced, who created one of the best air forces in the world by sheer integrity, honesty, his vision and his determination, and his personal example of integrity, honesty and total dedication to the cause of the country, the nation, and to build one of the finest air forces in the world. And it is on that foundation and on which the edifice of the Pakistan Air Force stands today. And mashallah, I know that its performance in the Zarb-e-Azab has been absolutely astounding. People don't know because unfortunately in this country, propaganda is always, divested and distracted from the real heroes, from the real people. The Pakistan Air Force performance during this Zarb-e-Azab was almost the determining factor of its success. And I want to give this message to the Pakistan Air Force and to the country, if anybody sees this, that the Pakistan Air Force performance, obviously, it owes to leadership, the leaders that have, that gave the Pakistan Air Force the wherewithals and the qualitative, leadership and training and conceptualization and the moral fabric to achieve these astounding results. Good luck and thank you very much.